G'day everyone, welcome back to another episode of Spark Your Fire. I'm your host, David Shee, and happy to have John Camino back on as always, mate. My partner in crime, should I say, for all these
Yep.
years, mate. Always good to see you. How are you?
I'm very well, David. It's been a long time, many years. Yeah, we started doing this during COVID, I remember.
Yeah,
So that's 5 years. Yeah,
that's
long may it
that
continue.
is a while back, goes all the way. So a lot of golden nuggets, and I think they keep evolving as time progresses as well. I reckon in a few
Yeah,
yees' time we'll be getting AI to do it on our behalf. Do you reckon?
yeah, this is right. If the AI can give me one chin back, that would be nice.
Anyway, good to have you here, mate, as always.
Yeah,
The hottest topic, RBA puts rates on hold this month, which
yeah,
I think there was, pretty much all the economy was punting that it is going to drop by 0.25 at least this
yeah,
month. So that came as a complete shock to the market. But having said that, the auction clearance rate doesn't seem to reflect that for some reason, John.
yeah, yeah. That's right. That's right. Uh, where to start? Because you're right, just on the auction clearance rates. I mean, there are always a couple of different ones that float around. I saw 80%. I think you saw 76%. Either way, they're high, and so the property market is doing quite well. They're
In
flying. I mean, they're
Sydney
the
and
Sydney
for
rates.
Sydney at least,
But
yeah.
in terms of the interest rates, rates are coming down. I think the inflation rate, the annualized inflation rate, is 2.1%, which is at the bottom of the range. So
Yes.
they're gonna cut, and there'll be probably two this year and one early next year, and then they'll probably be done. But I kind of think that I don't actually begrudge them for doing this. I mean, how we get into these inflationary spirals is because interest rates are left too low for too long, which is something that they want to avoid. But I also think they're playing the politics. I think that they're trying not to fall into the game of kind of the market expectations bullying the RBA into action. I think that they're just trying to say, no, 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 we're going to control this,
Mm,
and moving rates in July without the data from the second quarter
yes.
is irresponsible. There's no kind of urgent kind of Lehman crisis hovering over us. If we wait another month and we get Q2 data, then we can make an informed decision about the quarterly state, and they can get a better sense of where the trend is. It seems like a perfectly reasonable
Mm,
way to do it. Interestingly, Chairman Powell at the Federal Reserve did exactly the same thing. The market was expecting an interest rate cut. He said no, and I think he said no because of the same reason. He wanted to wait for the second quarter inflation data to come out. But I also think he doesn't want to be pushed around by Donald Trump. So he wants to say, I'm the chairman of the Fed, not you. I'm going to lower rates when I want to lower rates. And even if that means by delaying it by one meeting, at least he's putting his stamp on things.
mm.
So I think that the RBA is doing the same thing. I think they're saying, hang on a minute, this is up to us, and we're gonna go slow and steady,
Yeah.
as they should really.
Yeah. I mean that makes sense. And it's certainly from an independence perspective as well, right? Like they need to hold their independence. And I think for the first time they actually revealed the votes. It was six in favor of holding and three against of
Right.
holding. So there are still, 33% of team member or 33% of the board were actually suggesting that it should be
Mm.
a cut, whereas the other
Yep.
66% is obviously considering, we should be a hold in that case, right? So it started to divide, and that was an interesting one. I don't know whether you watched the interview after the rate announcement. Michelle Bullock was basically getting grilled from all angles from the media to say,
Mm.
shouldn't it be a card? What do you think about those damages, those suffering mortgage holders that's currently waiting and like they're just cutting in from all various angles. And I think the clear message
Yeah.
from Michelle Bulger was that look, the direction is definitely going down, but we just need to have it's more of a timing issue. We want to see more
Yeah.
data. We want to make sure the inflation is definitely under control before we actually pull the trigger and going down. So I think that's the reassuring message. It's a temporary hold, not a change in the direction as per se, using her word. So that's positive, but and I think that reflects on the auction clearance market because you would have thought that well, me personally, as most people would know that I'm also hunting for property at the moment. I was secretly hoping that the auction clearance rate is going to come down a little bit because that was a shock in the
Yeah.
system. But that's definitely not the case in Sydney. It's gone up to 76%, which is even higher than
Yeah.
last weekend.
Yeah.
So I was quite disappointed to see that. Plus it's
Yeah.
school
Yeah.
holidays as well. So, you
Yeah.
would have thought that, hang on,
That's
that's
right.
that's a
Why
normally
aren't you
high
on the Greek
number.
islands?
I
Yeah.
know. I know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's the I think that there was a 24-hour digestion of the RBA decision, and that's it. And I think that
That's
the
it.
market hasn't really changed anything other than the time frame of
Mm.
the next rate cuts. I think that there's still going to be two this year. There's going to be another one next year. And if they surprise us, it'll just be about pausing. It won't be about um, whether or not they're directionally going down.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I also do think, and I see this on property discussion forums all the time, this obsession with where the rate's going. I mean, a 0.25, a quarter of a percent change in interest rates, like the market salivating over this is insane.
Mm.
And it doesn't make much of a difference. The thing that's affecting our standard of living is like that we all get taxed at about 50% of our income. I mean, this is like if anyone knows, the the Spartan slaves were taxed at 50% of their crops back in the during the Peloponnesian War. The fact that you're only allowed to keep 50% of what you produce is insane, and that has a much bigger impact on our standard of living
Mm.
than whether or not the interest rate goes from 5.75 or 6%. It's obsessing over the wrong thing, and it's taking up a lot of our energy. Where
That's true.
we in the investment markets and property markets are discussing like 5.75 or 6% um, interest rates is crazy when we're happy to be taxed at
Yeah.
um, half of our income. That's crazy stuff.
Taxation system, unfortunately, isn't seems like it's on the agenda at the moment on that. But
No, it doesn't. It
yeah,
doesn't. We're just gonna.
no, because that's where the revenue of the governments are coming from. So they're obviously not gonna say it,
No, that's right.
right?
That's
So,
right. But
um,
look, rest assured. I mean, you talk about the government taxation. They need higher property prices, so don't worry about
right.
what's happening to interest rate. They want to tax us, and until they figure out how to tax falling prices, um, until they figure out how to tax deflation, don't worry. Property prices will go up.
That seems to be the trend. As long as inflation's there, that's always going to be the case, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, so that's a little surprise, but then again, I don't think it's going to impact the property trend too much, as per se.
Yep.
Although one funny observation is that Sydney is still very strong, but I think Melbourne's auction clearance rate has started doubled it, or I think it was down to 69%
Mm.
instead. So, I think those people looking at Melbourne is had a bit of shock, had a bit more shock, I guess, than the Sydney siders, based on this interest rate hold. But I reckon, yeah, it's not going to last for long. I reckon it will still pick up, and in August, never say never. That might be the time when RBA has got enough data to be able to make that decision to cut another 25 basis
Yeah.
points. So we will see. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of Melbourne, I mean, they're still, what are they, the fourth most expensive city in Australia after Sydney, Brisbane, and maybe Adelaide. I could be
Actually,
making that
Perth and
one up.
Adelaide has both surpassed Melbourne now.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, so actually Canberra, I don't know. I think Canberra might have
Is it right? Is that
Melbourne.
right? So
Maybe I'm
I
wrong now.
I would think that you're buying into weak. If you're buying in Melbourne at the moment, I think you're going to be okay.
That's
And
right.
right.
Pretty much, yeah. As long as the cash flow can stacks up, which I think
Yeah.
is the main struggle. But yeah, otherwise, if you can get into Melbourne market, you'll be
Mm.
laughing at the next 5, 10 years, that's for sure. So
Yeah.
awesome. All right, John. Well, look, I think the our last episode around how to estimate the property value is proving to be very helpful. I certainly get a lot of insight into it in terms of applying and
Yes.
then using that technique. So, thank you very much on behalf of the audiences. Now that's like we said last time. Let's do round two of this or continuation of it. We now that you worked out how much you're wanting to offer, how would you go about proposing or put forward your offer to be able to maximize your chance of securing the property? So, you know, I think this is what a lot of everyday property investors like us wanting to know from a professional like you, obviously, doing deals literally day in and day out. You must have done hundreds, if not thousands, of negotiation with agents. So, we're keen to pick your brain again to see, okay, well, what sort of tactic do you use, and how can you maximize that chance of
Yeah.
winning the offer?
So yeah, and I think that so I do all of Sydney, which means that I'm doing Western Sydney, I'm doing the northern suburbs, I'm doing Western Sydney, and I'm doing the south,
Mm,
and so on. And so they all actually have a very different complexion, and so the types of markets vary. And so I will give an example of how that can manifest in terms of the tactic that you use when you're negotiating a property. But generally speaking, what varies, what you need to manage is your urgency.
mm,
That's what you're managing, right? So,
okay.
there are things that you need to be nice. You need to be nice to the agent, and you need to think about what motivates the agent. He's after his commission or her commission, but they're also trying to act in the best interest of the client, and all those sorts of things. They're also trying to build their brand. So you got to think about what is in this for the agent. So they're trying to build their brand. They're trying to get other listings. They're trying to work in the best interest of their client, and so on. So you got to think about these things that motivate them. But what we're really managing, I think, is urgency. That's what's going to vary for
Okay.
the different types of negotiations that you do. So the first thing I'd say is, if you know that you like a property, tell the agent up front. That's always my Saturday phone call. Is to say, look, just to let you know, we like it. We like it. So keep me posted. Keep me on that short list, and then they put you on the metaphorical Rolodex. So be really forthright that you like the property, that you're interested. There's no point in being the best kept secret in the market, right? So you don't want it to be a secret that you like it. That's the first thing. So the second thing is sort of stay intimate with the agent during the campaign so that it doesn't accidentally get sold to someone else
Mm.
when you always wanted to buy it. Like, you might be arranging finance, you might be deciding what you like, you might be considering other options. You want to make sure it doesn't get sold to anyone else.
When you say staying
Um,
intimate, how do you do that? How do you keep that like, do you like specifically, do you have an example? Like
well, I
communication
mean,
plan, following up, email, what do you do?
yeah, all the phone calls, emails, updates, right? So they want to know where you are with your um, campaign as a buyer, and
Mm,
whether or not you're ready to make offers. It's that sort of thing. So you just keep them updated
okay,
where you are.
sure.
Um, so, as I said, the thing that's going to vary between between the different types of negotiations is the urgency, right? So in I did two deals in the last week. One was in Western Sydney, one was in Bondi Beach. And the eastern suburbs campaigns tend to be, and this is mostly in a Sydney everywhere,
Mm,
they tend to be a limited period of time, as in they're working towards an auction date, and they generally don't accept offers in the first 2 weeks. Sometimes they do, but generally speaking, 2 weeks to just let the campaign breathe, and then in the final week or the final week or two, then they're going to start to take offers, and you can
yep.
have your conversations then. So for the first 2 weeks, you're keeping the agent warm, I suppose,
Hmm.
giving them indications that you're interested, and asking them when can we make an offer, when can we, that sort of stuff. So that's kind of those inner ring. That's the eastern suburbs. Very seasoned agents there. Very seasoned agents. In the western suburbs, everything's for sale rather than for auction. So they would be in parts of Western Sydney, and I bought something in that southwest corridor during the week. There, everything's for sale, which means they're going to take offers on the same day,
Yeah.
and the urgency levels all change. So rather than sort of thinking about like where the market is and all the, how much you want the property, and maybe this one that's coming up for sale in the corner, maybe that's the right one for us. You need to make quicker decisions in some of these, in like the western suburbs. The reason everything is for sale is because I think there's a lot more stock in general. They need to get these properties moving, but also because there's a lot more tenants in these properties as well. So maneuvering inspections around tenants is quite difficult.
Mm,
Um, And so rather than having like a 4 week campaign with um, two inspections per week and then the odd random inspection, that they need to get the sale done quickly. What that means is you need to be much quicker in the western suburbs, much quicker.
Yep.
You need to be doing same day offers in the western suburbs. You're going to get a cooling off period. You're going to make an offer. You're going to put your deposit down today. In the eastern suburbs, you're going to do an unconditional offer, but you're going to get more time to do that.
Mm.
And so the negotiation is very different. But in what unites the two different tactics about speed and urgency in the western suburbs versus kind of like a more slow, methodical version in like the eastern suburbs and North Shore is that ultimately the best tool you have is knowing your market. So we had a chat before the cameras went on about trying to value a property and how to do that. You still need to spend your time doing that process. And so the best shield and sword that you have is market knowledge.
Mm.
So that's so you can't really skip that step.
And how do you get that market knowledge apart from obviously, being a professional who works in the property industry like you? How would an everyday property investor achieve?
Uh yeah. How do other people do it? I mean, they hire buyers agents to do it for them. I
Yes.
mean, I remember on the Saturday I saw the property with my clients, so we went to see it with the clients. That was one way I managed that.
Hmm.
And I knew we were going to try to make an offer in the afternoon at about 3 or 4 o'clock. So I raced home and got my spreadsheet out and spent a couple of hours. It probably was a couple of hours coming up with a methodology on how much this property was worth. And then by 3 or 4 o'clock, we were making offers.
Yeah.
So how do I do it? I use the methodologies we spoke about in the last podcast, which is running comparables. I'm using ChatGPT a little bit on comparables too, because
Mm.
I will get comparables from like a CoreLogic, but I also ask ChatGPT what are the five most recent sales in this area, and sometimes it's a bit more current.
Mm.
Um, so I'm using ChatGPT for that sort of thing. Um, and you run the numbers and comparables, and I always use that rent capitalization method and come up with a position, and then we go into to negotiate based on what we think it is. So I'm not so interested. One of the factors is what does the agent want, but
Mm.
I'm not so interested in that because I kind of ignore the noise and say what do I think it's worth, and if what they're asking is a bargain, I'm going to give them that offer and take the bargain.
Yeah, okay. So it's about working out and asking the right questions to the agent in terms of, I guess, understanding what's going to tick for the agent and what's going to tick for the seller, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Now, with the agents are motivated by different things. I mean, we talked about their brand and so on, but also the commission. So another grinding another $10,000 out of you, no one's making any money out of that. So the good news is, as a buyer, that there is a limit after which the agent has no interest in really pushing the price. I mean, generally speaking, they do the ring around and the price will go up anyway. But their motivations are satisfied by getting a certain amount of commission, and that can move on to the next deal. So one of the good news as a buyer is that there is a level after which, a price after which, there is no motivation for the selling agent to really push you harder. They're quite happy to get the deal done
Yeah.
at these levels, and that's the other thing that you need to kind of be mostly aware of.
Yeah. I,
Yeah,
I agree with that because, ultimately, like you said, maybe 50 grand type of additional purchase price isn't going to be a make or break. They
mm,
rather focus on getting this deal done so they can actually spend more energy and focus onto getting the next deal,
getting the next
whether they're
listing.
sourcing the next deal, right? Because that's where the big ticket item is going to be.
Yep,
So as long as it falls within that kind of market, that
yep,
price bracket expectation, they will try to help close the deal
yep,
as long as all the terms and conditions are satisfied
yep,
in that sense.
yep.
There is also the other annoying side of things, like you mentioned, the eastern suburbs, maybe the upper, the north, the lower north shores, where the vendor is very, very determined to take it to the auction in that case. Have you got any tips or tricks in terms of for the buyers on how you can potentially still still try to get on because like generally when it goes to an auction, like the results. It's not like the people are driven by emotions. Right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
emotions that play in auction. So we always see auction results blown way out of water, right? And you think,
Mm.
how would that be possible? So if you're looking at try to actually get and maximize your chance of offer being accepted for an auction scenario, do you have any kind of or prior to
Yep.
auction scenario, do you have any tips or tricks on that?
Well, again, the agent's motivation, the agent's quite happy to sell before because then they get their Saturday back, right? So
Mm, mm.
Saturday's the busiest day. If you can take a property off the market prior to auction, they're just 1.5 hours richer now, right? So their Saturday just freed up. So that's one thing. It's
Okay.
never the agent not wanting to do it. So that's the first thing to have a think about. Um, the, the the I mean, things sell prior to auction, generally speaking, because they don't feel like there's enough competitive energy at an auction.
Mm,
So there are two reasons why a property will definitely go to the auction. One is, and it's always coming from the vendor, really, because the agent doesn't mind. But the first reason is that they there are many interested people, and doing a Dutch auction is just going to take way too much time. You might as well just do it at auction, right?
yeah.
Um, so that's the main reason. The second reason is if it's a deceased estate. If it's a deceased estate, it's going to auction because they want to sell it openly, publicly. They don't want any of the kind of descendants or the people in the will arguing that perhaps it wasn't done as openly as it should, or the estate as openly as it could be. So if there's anything that's a deceased estate that's going to auction,
Yeah.
it's going to auction, and there's no real kind of arm twisting or offering that you can do to derail that.
Yeah.
That's going to be the outcome. Yeah. So if you're going to auction, then you do your like if you know you're definitely going to auction, you can back off from the agent. You don't need to like smother them and try to get auctions offers taken. It's not going to happen. But yeah, they're the kind of the two reasons why something is definitely going to auction. Yeah,
Okay.
if it's more time consuming to bring everyone around and do a Dutch auction, they're just going to say, "Don't worry, let's just do it on
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I can understand that, for deceased estate and like for property that's very competitive, then obviously in the vendor's best interest and transparency, it's probably always better off to have it as an auction through
Yeah.
that process. So yeah, totally understand that. Okay. Now, it's funny that you mentioned in your first point, keep good relationship with or basically show that you like the property. Because I know a lot of people, even though because they obviously want to get a bargain price. Right? Oh,
Yeah.
that don't like that wall that's painted blue. That's
Yeah.
terrible. That wouldn't be the type of strategy that you advise, isn't it? Just because they try to cut a couple $1,000s off on the purchase price.
Yeah. Yeah, we've spoken about this before. Like someone who goes into the inspection says to the agent, I mean, I like it, but it's on a main road. It's like, no, everyone knows it's
Mm,
on a main road, and you don't need to tell him that. He knows it's the price has been adjusted for that. So don't go and talk about things you don't like. You don't have to like everything, but you just don't need to say it. And partly it's just manners. Have good manners. So you're right. I always see people sort of telling the agent what they don't like about the property within earshot of other buyers. It's a terrible strategy. Don't do that. Don't do that. So buying a property is a little bit of a charm offensive. So be charming, be charismatic. All these things are helpful. Be nice.
It does take a lot of practice and experience. It's easy for you to say, John.
It's
I
other
mean, every
people's money
property
too.
investor find it challenging, even try to basically compete in the current market, right?
Yeah.
This is becoming an Australian sport, is the way
Yeah.
I look at it, basically. So, certainly it wasn't as challenging 10 years ago or even earlier, potentially. It was a lot easier, but yeah, I think there's just a lot more challenges.
Yeah.
Anyway, so back to yes. So what else can you share apart from those? Like an unconditional offer, which I think you mentioned previously. Unconditional offer without cooling off period.
Mhm.
That's going to put, obviously, that's going to be in your favor because you have no way to back out. But under what circumstances should you be careful about using that?
So anything that is scheduled for auction, even if you've got 4 weeks,
Mm,
you have to make an unconditional offer. So
okay.
there's no cooling off period in the lead up to a campaign. So
Yep.
just to get, it's not, no one's being cheeky, no one's being sneaky, no one's trying to give you a Chinese burn. You have to, it's going to be an unconditional offer if there's an auction date. Because what no one wants to do is take a property essentially off the market while you do your due diligence, only to find out that it's not for you, and then you've completely derailed the auction campaign. So,
Yep.
anytime there's a property that's for auction, even if they accept an offer in the first week, which they won't, um, it's going to be unconditional. Now, I forgot what was the question. When would you make an unconditional offer?
So yeah, so what are the things that you need to watch out?
Oh,
In terms of using so unconditional offer is a tool that can basically improve your probability of winning in this
yep.
instance, right? Because let's say you got two offers coming from two different buyers who basically had same pretty much similar, but one has got unconditional offer, the other one doesn't.
Yeah,
Obviously,
yeah.
the seller's going to look at it more favorably, but at the same time, like you mentioned, like if it's for auction, then it's pretty much a no-brainer. You will want to put for an unconditional offer. But on the other side of the fence, when should you be cautious about using this? Are there any things that could backfire? For example, or under what circumstances would you choose a normal offer as opposed to an
Mm.
unconditional offer?
So if it's for sale, generally speaking, that they'll accept a cooling off period.
Mm,
If the property's been on the market for a long time, you might be able to entice them with an unconditional offer. But the only time you should never do unconditional is if you haven't done your due diligence. So if you don't have a strata report or if you haven't done a building and pest inspection, just never offer anything unconditional. The other thing is if it's a complicated deal. Sometimes in commercial you see this, but other times. Yeah, if it's complicated, maybe there's like maybe it's a deceased estate again or something like that. Something that makes the deal a bit complicated, and you need to go away and look into something a bit more. Sometimes it's zonings and those sorts of things. Don't do unconditional in those circumstances either.
okay.
But generally for sale, you can do cooling off. For auction has to be unconditional, and if you're going to do unconditional, it can take a bit more time. That's okay. Just make sure you've done your due diligence. The other thing is, of course, make sure you can execute on it. So make sure you got finance
Yes. Yes.
before you make an unconditional
Finance
offer.
pre-approved and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there is one other thing we haven't spoken about. So there are kind of a couple of things that you can do to sweeten the deal if you want to take a property off the market.
Hmm.
One is make it unconditional. So that's a really strong and common way of doing it. So make sure you've done the due diligence before you make an unconditional offer. Um, the other thing is, uh, what was I going to say? The other thing is. Shortening or lengthening the settlement period.
Mhm.
So once you find out kind of what the motivation of the vendor is, um, shortening the settlement period down to say 4 weeks. Under 4 weeks is difficult for the mortgage broker, as you would know. But if you've got finance locked and loaded, and if there's no one living in the property, so no one has to like speed up their move out
Yeah.
time, there's a good chance, like particularly for empty properties, shortening the settlement period is a
Mm,
lovely way to sweeten the deal for the vendor, so they're
mm,
more likely to take your offer.
mm. Okay. So that's a good one.
Yeah,
Shorter settlement's definitely a headache for us, given the fact that base
yeah,
times can vary, but
yeah,
you could use it to your arsenal as long as you check with your mortgage broker that the 4 weeks or a shorter settlement period is okay. If you get the
yeah,
go ahead, then yeah, by all means, that's gonna make
yeah.
it a lot more promising in that instance. So
Yeah, and ask the broker before you start negotiating terms, like settlement period.
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. So in summary, I guess this comes down to finding out what the vendor and the sales agent's motivations are at the end of the day.
yep,
It's about determining what's going to work for them, and what are the parameters that you can make it more enticing for them. So, and give them that in order
mm,
um in order to maximize your chance of getting the offer accepted beforehand, is the way I
yep,
look at it. Yeah.
yep, yep,
Okay.
yep.
Awesome. Anything else
Yeah.
to add, John? Do you reckon?
Well, there is one other thing, and it kind of ties a little bit into, sorry, I got something in my eye, ties a little bit into this idea of like going in and like shitting on the property and saying, oh, it's on a main road, or I don't like the kitchen, or whatever it is. Um, now I forgot what I was going to say again. No, this is I need to sleep more, but um, it's the name of the game is buying a property. So you just don't want to be so clever that you keep missing out either. So if you're going to get particularly in a private treaty, so you want to make sure that you realize that your objective is to be successful at buying a property. You're not trying to like be successful at like some game of clever words or some negotiation. So it's not a negotiation game; it's a buying game. And I think just bear in mind that there's all these things that are going to be that you can control, other things that you can't control, and be as clever as you can with the things that you can control. But at the end of the day, if you don't walk away with the property, you've lost. So
Correct.
make sure that you just bear in mind that this is still a game of buying properties.
That's very true. Yeah, and indeed, it's I think it's not about yeah, it's about getting that outcome
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
end of the day, right? So yeah, so definitely no point in terms of putting down the yeah how you paid for the offer. So actually, John, I've just remembered one thing before it slips my mind.
mm,
Um, does it make sense to put a timestamp on your offer?
yeah, yeah. Always, even if you don't mean it. You need to have a limit on the offer that, so you ring up, you make a verbal offer and you say, look, I'm gonna, I'd like to offer this.
They
I'm
usually
gonna
ask you to
email it
text it
to you
now.
now.
They want it in writing nowadays,
They
John.
want it in writing, and you want it in writing too. So you go and you make you do your email now with the offer. You need to write it as though it would be forwarded to the vendor,
Mm,
just in case. You never know. Sometimes it will be. So it needs to be persuasive. Um, I write emails with comparables in my offer email
okay.
on the understanding that it's probably going to get forwarded to the vendor, so that because the vendor wants to know it's a real offer, bona fide offer. But you also want to persuade the vendor, as probably a secondary reader of this email, why you have offered what you've offered, and you're trying to massage their expectations as well. It's like, well, I hadn't thought of that. That this
Mm,
is a really good offer.
mm,
Actually, the most recent comparable is lower than what I want.
mm.
And so write an email, write your written offer email with expectations that the vendor will read it and put comparables in your email offer.
And timestamp? How would you do
And
it?
timestamp. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so look, it depends on what time you give, but it's generally give them 24 hours. I mean,
Okay.
you don't need to give more or less than that.
So this offer is valid for 24 hours
Yeah.
or up till close of
Yeah.
business tomorrow
Close
or
business tomorrow. Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah.
it'll
Yeah.
put the
And you'll get
pressure
it. You'll
back
get an
onto
answer
the vendor,
before then.
basically. Yeah, okay. Good. All right. I
Hmm.
think we pretty much covered it all.
All right.
Yeah, I feel I covered a lot of little bits and pieces. So hopefully, as long as our audience can take away one or two things from this conversation, I think that's all that matters. So thanks again, John. Thanks for your wisdom and insights as always.
Pleasure.
I'm sure we'll bring you back on again for more tips and tricks next time.
Let's do it.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks for
All
having me.
right. Thank you everyone for joining us. And yeah, look, I hope you have a nice week. And yeah, we'll see you again in another episode of Spark Your Fire. Cheers, John and David.